Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of you caught me off guard, Chris. You're trying to share in lay terms. I'm your host, Payman Ascari. Um, I have with us today Mr. Kris Eriksen. How's it going, Chris?
Going well, man. How are you?
I'm good. Do you want me to give you a moment to restream it?
I'm good. I've retweeted it from your page. We're all good.
Okay. Chris, I guess first of all, thank you very much for coming on. I saw you in an ex Twitter space, and like it was just so fascinating how much experience you have in politics. So I had to have you on.
Appreciate that, man. And anything I can do to help, I'm here.
So, Chris, I guess it's customary on this show. I always ask the guests if you could just tell the audience a little about yourself. You can take as much time as you like.
Okay. Yeah, kind of been all over the place. I've worked in a few leadership positions in with teams in security. I was a lead hand for infection control at a hospital. I'm formally trained in the field of social work, social services diploma. But my background's more in community organizing and working with marginalized communities, disenfranchised communities, to try and help give them a voice. And then it shifted as you get in front of more politicians and they realize you're not going away. I became quite a pain in the ass, for lack of a better term, in regards to seeing a lot of the systemic corruption within local communities, municipal, provincial, and then eventually get up to federal. One of my last positions, I was a white hat contractor basically for a long period of time, for over 10 years. Not affiliated with any parties during that time. Yeah, I would work for not-for-profits, for private sector companies, as well as from time to time working with politicians where some of the issues they can't come out and deal with, but they know there's problems within the community. And so I'd be somebody they could tap that could be objective, ethical, and I can't be compromised in that sense. I won't sacrifice my dignity, my ethics, my ability to look at myself in the mirror. Eventually, I elevated up to working with the Speaker of the House of the BC Legislature, Daryl Pluckus, but I waited until he was an independent to do that. Yeah, and when I did that for a little over a year with the Speaker's office, and for the most part, a lot of it was, I always knew I wasn't a part of I couldn't be a part of the game. Like I went to the meetings in the basements, where it's like WWF, all the people are drinking from their $1,000 bottles of whiskey, but I never felt comfortable there, right? And I was always the kind of guy to point stuff out that would make people kind of, hey, right, are you with us? And I'm like, not really, no. So I eventually started not getting invited to those because I knew, in politics, to me, it was very clear that if I wasn't willing to give up a part of myself, I wasn't going to be able to go any further in the field. And I was never looking to elevate. It was never about prestige. It was never about spotlight for me. It was about making sure taxpayers, their money wasn't being exploited. And if a not-for-profit or private sector, boards go astray all the time, subversion of mandates, I'm the guy that can come in and find out how that's going on, kind of clean house and then move on to the next contract. So it's been a giant adventure before the COVID event that kind of made me step back, retire from the game. And I ended up on X during the Wii scandal. I was bored. And then people on X, like a salute to all you guys that have come out, and when it was Twitter as well, that have started keep dropping stuff under my posts and saying, hey, have you seen this? Have you seen this? And I'm looking at it going, well, I understood the micro levels of corruption and how things work within systems, and how there's so many loopholes for abuse. But then you pull back, oh, okay, provincial. It's like, wow, most of the people of the BC legislature, right? I didn't know I was walking around with communists all the time. To me, it was a surprise. It's like, okay, you're all on the same team. That's kind of creepy, but I was never one of them in that sense. And then you go to a federal level, and then you go global, and it's like, wow, okay, a lot of the same things are being done. And at the end of the day, who's left behind, right? All the people that need government to work in a way that is for their benefit, or at least get out of the way so that we can actualize, live our lives, have a family, and whatever your purpose is, right? And then I get to the point where I'm sitting here and it's like, okay, well, I'm already out there. I put my name out. I don't hide from anything that I say or do. I'm comfortable with who I am. But at the same time, we get to this point where, 5 years into this, and it's like, what a carnival, man. I'm using that term appropriately with Mr. Carney, right? So we're in it. And I think that, I have a skill set. My main focus, like I love drawing the best out of people. I love to be able to step back and focus on health, on wellness and healing, those kinds of things. But in the end, you got to swing. If you got a voice, you got to use it. And So yeah, I'm here as a part of that, being, putting myself out there a bit more. So I appreciate you having me. I'll leave you there. Leave it there for you. Thanks.
For the last time, I'm the one that appreciates you coming on. This show would be
Mutual.
nothing with guests like you. Yeah. Kris, I'm going to pick up on one thing you said. Communism. You said I couldn't believe how many communists there were in the parliament in BC, and I'm gonna abruptly use that to transition to the Liberal Party leadership convention yesterday. I've watched about half of it, the first half, and by watch, I fast forwarded over all the nonsense CBC reporters. The one thing that there's many themes, and one of them is progressivism, and Trudeau didn't hide it. So for people that don't understand, progressivism is this philosophy that the government has to build the kind of society we want to live in, and government is our caretaker, it's our parent. And he actually said, and the government's always expanding, like it's always progressing into something. There's it's like communism actually. Like you just want to get to the utopia, but you never define it. And
Right.
Trudeau said this. He said, we've done so much work, but there's no time to celebrate. We have to do more work. Um, I don't know how to put this in the form of a question. Do you think the problem is it is progressivism in with the Liberal Party with Canada?
Um, yeah, I think on like some levels, I think it's like it's weird, right? Because people ask, I use the term communism, and they're like, well, it's not really communism. We have like it's fascism. It's like this, it's like a bastardization of all these different terms brought together under the guise of that, the Great Reset, if you want to use that term. I think that like even like when I use the term communists for the people in BC, I don't necessarily like I use the term globalist, but I kind of use that loosely because it's not very well defined. I'm a nationalist as far as that I want Canada to be the I want our country and the people in this country to be first and foremost on the minds of those that are elected to represent our interests, right? And so when I use the term globalists, I'm describing somebody as working with for a foreign agenda, whether it's UN Agenda 2030, whether it's SDGs or ESGs. But I think when it comes to progressivism, it's that caretaker mentality, which inherently is saying you don't know how to live your life. You can't make decisions
Yeah.
for yourself. We are going to tell you right now. You walk in and I see it's like bizarro world, right? It's like you're not allowed to buy Crown Royal. It's like the government's telling you what liquor you can and can't buy. And I think that I'm a libertarian on like I don't like labels. You'll even see that on my page. I don't like to say, hey, I'm this, right? But I would be considered, I think, like a classical liberal, old school liberal, not how they define it today. When it comes to civil liberties and that freedom, I'm a believer that if you're not harming anybody and you're out there, you're just living your life, libertarian components to that, the government needs to get out of the way. And I think that you lose sight of that because with more government is more taxes, and you're taking money out of the pockets of the people to live their best life, the best quality of life they can have. So I think you're right. I think at the root of it, it's that mentality of progressivism that is inherently opposed to the idea of freedom. And we can talk about how do you define freedom in many different ways, but for me, it is that get out of the way. If I'm not hurting anybody and I have that drive, I have that initiative, or the ability for people to look at it saying, oh, the government's going to take care of me, so therefore I don't have to do anything. I don't have to explore the world. The government's just going to lay everything out. They're going to carve the path that I'm supposed to walk. And it's almost removing the sense of purpose that an individual can find through their lives if they face those challenges, if they have to make those decisions and step back. So I think you're right. I think progressivism is kind of like a blanket over the fire in a sense for each individual. I think that it's counterproductive to the individual. And so it's like you can play around with words, whether it's progressivism or communism, and it's that caretaker mentality that really does inhibit the growth of a country. It inhibits the growth of the individual. So I'm a polar opposite to it. But I used to walk with progressives that had some good ideas in my mind. I'm thinking, oh, okay, this and this. But when you get right down to the root of it, it's like, yeah, that's not really me, right? And then I look around, like I say, I'm politically homeless. I don't see anybody in Parliament representing my interests or the interests of Canadians. So it's I couldn't watch it. Like I watched some of it, and I did the same thing. Like I wait for some great accounts on X that they'll take the clips of things that I know that I want to see, but all I see is a stage, man. I see this weird. I just see a cult gathering for the most part. It's like you do you. A lot of you don't even realize what you're supporting, but that's the thing with it, right? When they control the narratives, and the mass formation psychosis, the ability to flick a switch, and what's the new thing people are going to go on. I just stand back and shake my head and try not to judge, but it's really hard. I spent most of my life not looking up to people or looking down on people, and it's tough right now when I look down. I'm looking down on the globalists that are playing these games. They're puppeteering, and I feel bad for the Canadian people because they really don't understand they're in a game, and that's the hardest part. It's like dating a narcissist, right? You're in a game you don't even know you're playing, right? And but once you wake up to it, and that's kind of why I spend a lot of my time on ICU as well, and others on X, is kind of like trying to ride that line straight and narrow. This is what reality is, and not letting government define that reality, which they're so good at. They've almost perfected it, right? Creating these parallel universes, parallel societies, right? All these different groups that have a different form of what is real. So yeah, a bit of a long-winded response, but hopefully I covered what you were hoping for there.
Yeah, let's stay on this topic. You were telling me earlier how this leadership race, it took away our ability to punish and sort of hate Trudeau, because they brought him up as sort of the savior. It's almost like a clean slate. The last 10 years didn't happen, and he set the objectives for the Carney campaign. One is progressivism. The other one was climate change. Another one is the hatred of Trump and the escalation and continuation of the tariff wars.
Yeah.
I don't know. Your thoughts?
Well, I think it's like so much of it is like the level of it's like one psyop after another, and to me it was like I still celebrated, right? And it's difficult, like because everyone's saying, we want Trudeau gone, we want Trudeau gone, and I think it was very crafty, and probably I don't know if it would have gone the same way without the Trump stuff happening with the war, with the trade war and stuff. I don't know if Carney. I initially looked at it going, okay, well, I always viewed Carney as a closer. Right, he's been behind the scenes forever in Canada. He was appointed by Stephen Harper. He was Bank of England, Bank of Canada, and then he came on during COVID to help Trudeau spend more money than any prime minister, all the prime ministers combined, help Canada. But I was kind of on the fences in regards to whether or not he'd take the chance of losing, right? To Polyev, and then as more of the smoke clears, you're kind of like, oh, okay, I can see the game here. This is not helpful to the country, but hey, let's tear the lid off this. Let's wake up as many people as we possibly can. The carnival's arrived, but I felt that it was a tactical decision to be able to transfer power to Carney, so that there wouldn't be I'm resigning, we're going to an election, so that Canadians, for me, man, it's like 5 years without having any acknowledgement of the harms that have occurred. There's been no, many people probably haven't even started the healing journey. So I looked at the Trudeau resigning as a potential for, okay, let's celebrate for a week. He's gone, but we got to get back on the horse because there's globalists everywhere and they don't have our interests at heart, right? But they took that from us and they installed this guy, and the media did a masterful job in going, hey, this guy's an outsider. Nobody knows who Mark Carney is. And so many people fell for it, right? And they see an economist now, and they see it's so messed up, man. They see a central banker as being a good thing for a country when it comes to sovereignty and all these other fallacies that they convince us are real. And so I take, I'm happy Trudeau is gone, but the replacement, we both know, is like, I kind of view Carney as Trudeau's handler, right? It's like, oh crap, right? They're going to do this now. Like I had my plan was like 2029. Yeah, we'll deal with Carney. Polyev will come in for 4 years, do that back and forth so that people are like, then they can blame Polyev for let's just keep rotating the chairs, and Agenda 2030, here we are, let's celebrate. But now it's here. It's right in front of us, right? So if people who are watching, you need to be able to detach yourself from Justin Trudeau, to learn from that. At the same time, he's just a face, but I did a little dance. I did okay, but I viewed it as like closing one chapter, and now immediately we're on to the next chapter. I thought we might have the election call or something like that would give people, an ability to come together, and in just doing that, there's a healing component when people get excited about something, even if in the end, you're just changing out one globalist for another. For those that don't realize that, they still need to have a chance to heal and to let go and to start building again and learning how to live again. And they took that from us. Now we're in this. Is there going to be an election in October? Is there going to be an emergency that suspends the election? Right. And so it's why the thing I learned to do over the past at least year and a half, 2 years, is stay in the moment. What's in front of me that I can control? What can I do for myself? Am I in my head all the time? Am I down? Am I letting these guys get to us? So I think that, but I do think it was a strategy, because they don't want us to celebrate. They don't want us to come together. They don't want us out in the streets with our flags celebrating, because right beforehand, what did they do? They took the flag back. Oh, Team Canada. And it's like, what? But
Yeah,
again,
that was a theme last night as well. Like,
and it's no different, right? You'll know what I mean. It's like every time there's an idea, the conservatives will take it. Canada first, make Canada great again. They won't let the populist movement have anything. They won't let the patriots have anything. They always co-opt it into their own narratives, and they gaslight the Canadian public into believing we're the saviors, we're the ones that are doing, let's read the polls, what are the polls saying, right? But it's all fake, man. But I do believe a lot more people are waking up to this. And even when I was attacking and starting to go at Polyev a little bit, attacking and asking questions, you can, what is that? Like, as soon as you go against the narrative, you won't toe the line. If you start calling these people out on their clear behaviors, not their words, it's like their actions. Once you get to that point where it's like, hey, there's an issue going on, then you get the same response. It's no different between the conservatives and the liberals when it comes to that, right? So we're at an interesting juncture. Are we at a crossroads? I guess so. But I think that we're in a better place now, at least, rather than having to wait 4 years and go through the games. I'd rather just, let's get to it. Let's expose these people for what they're doing, and try and figure out a way to bring people together, because they're so good at dividing us. I'll leave it there. Did I lose you? So if I'm still live, let me check the comments.
oh. Hey, Kris.
I was going to start doing, I wasn't sure if I was still live, so.
No. Were you going while I dropped?
I went for about 45 seconds, not sure. So doesn't
Oh,
matter.
okay. I thought the whole thing would have. Narcissistic me. I figured if my internet goes down, everybody else's on the planet does as well.
It might have cut out. I have no idea. We'll see on the playback. But yeah, all I was saying is that I'd rather have it. I'd rather have it happen now. I think a lot of people are waking up. A lot of people know there's something wrong. They just don't know what to do. They don't know exactly what's wrong. And it's no different than when we were going through things before. Those that wake up, what is defining awake? Everyone's at a different stage, right? And so that there's a lot of suffering in this country. There's a lot of people looking for, a place to land. And I think that, as more and more people wake up, welcome aboard, right? That's the thing. They take all those, like I was saying, the catchphrases, we're all in this together. No, me and you, and everybody who's kind of awake to this, that can see the matrix on whatever level, depending on how awake you are, we're the ones that have to keep our shit together and keep trying to at least help guide people, to remind people that we're here for a reason. Take something from the last 5 years is that you're still here, you're still gunning. You have this sense of there's a steadfastness. When the moment came down, you made the right decision, and it was a hard decision to make, to hold the line. And we still have to hold the line, but we have to grow, and it all comes down to community. So the more people that wake up, we got to welcome them aboard, and try and keep smiling, man. Like, I'm not a negative person. It might seem like that with my posts by saying we're in trouble, but you have to be able to step back and say, yeah, we're in trouble. But if you can't learn to smile in the storms, then you're going to have a lot more trouble, and a lot of it we do to ourselves, right? So I'll leave it there. Go ahead.
I've been so disrespected and beat down by our governments the last 5 years. Nothing really surprises me. So people, they're like, "Oh my God, the sky is falling, Canada's down." I'm like, it'll be fine. Don't worry. We've been through worse.
It's true, right? A lot of it is perspective, and it's attitude, right? I get up every morning and I'm grateful. I remind myself every morning, I got another one, right? Because it's not guaranteed. Nothing in life is guaranteed, right? So if you start off at that point, by the time I get a coffee, I'll start to, okay, what happened yesterday, or what's on the agenda for today. Go on X, and it doesn't take long before you're like, oh, okay, this is what's breaking news. But I don't get absorbed by it anymore. I don't get sucked into the abyss anymore on X. I think there's like a it's there's a healthy way of engaging X, in my opinion, and then there's an unhealthy way. And so doom scrolling all day, it does take a toll, right? Because you're carrying that weight, and it can look like nothing but darkness. But to me, I always find that silver lining. We're still here, right? For whatever reason, we're still here. And so I'm going to put my best effort forward every day. I'm going to focus on what I am grateful for. I'm not going to let toxic people, toxic things into my life. Because a lot of us, again, it's like when you look back, it's like, okay, well, what happened in 2020? It's like, okay, well, our world, I woke up the next day and I remember like saying, am I on this? What planet is this? Right? Because I'm kind of confused as to how everything has been inverted. And now I'm on the outside and need to be, I got to let the government experiment on me to get a Grand Slam breakfast at Denny's. Nothing made sense for a little while there, right? But once you get through that point, realize that there is a beauty to this, in a sense of, do you want to be blue pilled your whole life? Do you want to go through those motions of just you're born, you pay taxes, you die? And I think that, with this learning how to live again, there's a level of excitement I have to that. I have much more of an appreciation for the time I have on this planet than I did before. I was kind of just going through the motions day by day, 12 to 16 hour day working days, and not stopping, right? They say to smell the roses, right? And so now I'm at a point now where I'm in a good place emotionally, a good place mentally, but I think with many other people out there, just trying to figure out how best to participate in what we're seeing, and how do we move forward in a way that, that people don't lose hope and people, dig deep. It's important that you constantly are doing things to reignite that inner fire. And it doesn't have to be politics. It doesn't have to be X. It has to be remembering who you were before the pandemic. Let go of all the stuff you don't need. And then, you get to find yourself through that process. As long as you put the time in, I think that you can find yourself. I think you can find peace through this, to be able to learn to breathe and to appreciate every moment. As you're walking through, I notice things, the colors are vivid again. I feel like I'm finally, I'm almost 50, and I feel like I'm finally just starting to understand myself and appreciating life in a way that I don't think I would have ever had these globalists not done what they have done. But yeah, it's a crazy world, man. We're in a circus, but we're not a part of the circus in a sense. So we're kind of like the outside observers trying to figure out, okay, how did it get so bad? But more importantly, how do we move forward in a way that we can try and evoke positive change within a system that is stacked against us? And so, yeah, it's a big wall to climb. But what are you going to do? Are you going to stand there and take the hits? No, you got to figure out, right? Go under, go around. If going over or straight through is not an option, then you got to be creative. And a big part of that is keeping yourself in a place where you can be helpful to people. I remember a mentor when I was younger said, you're no good to anybody unless you're in a good place. And I've kind of like stepped back. I've taken time off of X. I've gone away to recharge my battery. But when I come back, every time I see it's like so many people you're watching, right? If you followed me for a long time, every single one of you has a part to play. It doesn't matter how many followers you have. It doesn't matter exactly what your issues are, what your passions are. If you see at least a base level of what we're up against, keep going. There's no reason to give up, because at the end of the day, we only get a short time on this spinning ball, man. So you got to be able to try and figure out a way to, and it annoys them, honestly. Even when I was in politics before, they're like, why are you so happy? Right? And it's just like, I know it irritates you. You want me to be miserable. You're throwing everything at me. You're trying to get me to slip up. And I'm just like, no, because I know your game. And I'm not going to let you inside my head, because there's no room. I got so much going on in my head. There's absolutely no room for people, for the trolls, for all the other people that are just trying to demoralize, whether they're AI bots or the overt people that are messaging on a daily basis, telling you how to think, or how, that the lies and the gaslighting, you just tune it out and focus on it, right? Like it's hard in this world, because it's like they create this massive divide when it comes to trust, right? I lost family, I lost friends through this whole process. I still don't know how long a conversation with a stranger is going to go before I trigger them with something I might say or an opinion I have. But I don't reciprocate in those situations either. It's just like, I know where you are on that. I know what for lack of a better term, what your software update, where you're at with that. And I try not to judge people, but I'm still going to live my life. I'm not going to hide. I'm not going to hang my head. You should be proud that in this moment in history, you took a stand against evil, against, it's like we got to see who has principles, who has values, what those values are. So it's kind of like it cleared everybody out. And then I meet people like you. I meet people, all over the place, where it's like, I know who I need in my life. I know who I don't need in my life. And as long as I can keep that balance, then I think I can be good and helpful to people, as we all walk together through this storm, for lack of a better term, right?
I'm going to pull on one thread you brought up. you mentioned that we obviously have to come up with solutions as well.
Yeah.
Let me paint a picture, just bear with me. Uh, LBJ, President Johnson, he always said like liberals can't think, conservatives can't speak. Um, so like one of the problems that we have, I'm not saying we have to identify as conservatives, but on this side, like we can never express our ideas. So like what are the terms that you and I have been using? Communism, progressivism, we might reference the sovereignty of the individual, property rights. And none of
Mhm.
that resonates with voters, right? They're like, what the hell are you talking about? Like, tell me what you're going to do to fix healthcare. I was in Edmonton a few days ago, residential area, and like I was at one corner, a house was transformed into a restaurant. Opposite the street, another house was transformed into a tattoo shop. Now I didn't go into the restaurant. I wouldn't get a tattoo, but
Right.
but like somehow in my heart I feel the problem is that we don't have property rights. We can't
Mhm.
own property in Canada, and there's no entrepreneurial spirit. So they've done it. You call them communists, and I agree. They've done it very, very slowly. You know, a little restriction here, a permitting issue there, a survey here, and all of a sudden, like you can't work. You have this house, you're paying all this property tax, you can't run a goddamn office out of it.
Right.
Like, how do we? How do we express to Canadians that, like, you know, vote for us so that we can free you, so that you can be what God intended you to be?
Yeah, I think that's like the biggest struggle is that they incrementally go they've incrementally taken away a lot of what we really never had at the same time. Like if you want to compare us to the Americans, oh, I'm probably going to get yelled at for that. But anyways, I don't care.
No, that's
But
exactly where I was going. Like we got our southern neighbors, and they're the most freest country in the world. Meanwhile,
mhm.
the leadership convention last night, everybody, the amount of hatred for the Americans was just is insane.
Yeah, and full disclosure here, I have American blood as well. I've got Scottish, Irish, Norwegian, American, and Indigenous, but I'm Canadian, right? But I don't carry that. It was just one of those things where, when you look at it's sad, right? Because as a human being, right? Like I think that if you want to have a business out of your home, you should be allowed to. If there's regulations to protect the public, so if you're selling food and other things like that, I understand a base level of there needing to be standards, right? But the ability, it's because I work with Indigenous communities a lot, and it's the same thing there, if not worse, as far as they're not able to own a home. It's the bandos that owns the home, and you go on a housing list, and if you qualify, and again, I don't want to get in, we can do another segment on that. But what it does is it takes away, it's like, again, the average home on a reservation last 10 years. Why? Because they don't own it, right? There's that the pride in owning a home, the pride in running your own business, the pride in putting, like, people don't realize, it's like you put 8 hours of work, and even if you don't like what you're doing, you put a hard day's work in, and there's something to be said about that for your confidence, your self-worth, knowing that you're contributing to your family, or doing what you need to do to better your life, and those around you. And I think what they've taken away, or never really allowed us to even flirt with in Canada, is that sovereignty of the individual, and that ability to, because you're a sovereign individual, or you have those things, right? It doesn't mean that. I think it builds community. I think it's like there's a respect thing. It's like you're all working hard. You all got a family. If you want a white picket fence and 2 dogs, excellent. That's totally your call. But don't tell me that I can't have 2 dogs or can't have a white picket fence, right? It's like, where does that line come? But on a base level, like a core level, for people to not have that inner drive as presented to you, as far as the government will get out of the way. It's like there's that, like you say, it's that paternal component where the government is your parent, right? And we see there's so many, we could spend hours talking about all the different things the government does to take away the parental rights, to take away that individualism and promote that individualism, the entrepreneurial spirit, which, it's like that's where innovation comes from, right? Let people and their minds free to explore, as long as you're not committing crimes, right? As long as you're, and we can define, now we don't even know what is a crime. What is a crime for me is not a crime for the politicians, right? But on a base level, if we were in a merit-based society, which I thought we were for a very long period of time, but illusions, got to reprogram the mind, nepotism, and all the rest of it. But I think that you hit a core as far as what defines a community, what defines an individual, what freedoms do we have within that community to build a life and a community. Because right now we're in a situation where it's very hard to find a new community, let alone, just going out into the external world. But what we aren't able to do on a base level is have that sense of ownership, that sense of pride for what you are building in your life. It's like they make us feel guilty for wanting things, but in order to have nothing and be happy, you have to have nothing, right? You have to never have tasted that. But we see with our American friends down in the States, they have this, it's different. Like I don't see a lot of differences between like Canadians that are in the middle, that are awake, that are not a part of a cult. There's not much difference between us and our American friends. When you have conversations with them, yes, there is like baselines as far as cultural differences you will run into. But as far as like that inherent human side of us, our cultures are not that much different, until you start getting into the weeds of government structures, our level of freedom, what they do in our public schools. Like I can see the Americans looking at us going, hey, right, yeah, no, we're nothing like Canadians. But honestly, if you sat down, you had a beer with them, we're not that different. They want us to think we're different. They want us to hate and all the rest of it. But I have lots of love for my brothers and sisters in America. I have, I don't know. It's like I wish, like parts of me, like I'm not into the 51st state thing. Like I've talked to people. I understand the argument, and if that happens, I would like to have a lot of their elected judiciaries, elected Senate, local sheriffs. And lower tax rates. Okay, I hear the arguments. Don't get me wrong. But I'm still attached, right? Like it's weird. I've got this like patriotism that now is vilified. It's like, what are you doing? Right? Because again, they can just tell you, oh, if you don't say Orange Man bad, then you're not, if you're not with us, you're against us. But understanding what a constitutional monarchy is, understanding the loopholes we have in our rights and protections in this country, we experienced it. So of course, it's appealing to me to think about what would we be like if we were a constitutional republic, if we had more protections, more checks and balances in place. Because right now, I just see it as a free for all. They are doing whatever they want, and I think they fear it. I think I'll say this. I think that a lot of people can argue that this is a controlled demolition that we're experiencing in our country, right? So as the building comes down, they have to be careful how many people are waking up at the same time, right? Because the last thing they want is to have there's a time and a place. Yes, they would love to have civil unrest because they can come in and they can do their thing. I'm not talking civil unrest. I'm talking about that ability to gather, to come together, to realize that a lot of how many of them are. It's like you can probably relate to this. It's like, I didn't believe we were a fringe minority when Trudeau came out during the convoy and said, hey, oh, you're just a small fringe minority. Yeah, I was isolated because I felt that from my friends from high school. Like I felt that, okay, like you too. I can remember I said that so many times, you too, right? But then the convoy happened, right? And as the overpasses, I mentioned this on the space, it's like for the 3 days, it's like, is this real? Is this actually happening? Is this real? And then you saw all of them come together. And then in my heart, it's like, yeah, they were gaslighting us. It's a small fringe minority. No, that's a lie. And now it's been what, 3 years? Way more people are awake, right? So there's millions more of us that are saying, no, we do not like what's going on. Yet they still have control over the narrative. They have the media. They have their ability to spin their webs, the mass formation. But I have a feeling, if there was no risk of bank accounts being frozen, if there was no risk of being arrested, fines, all this other stuff that we really made them pull every lever that they had to say, hey, know your place. Daddy is sending you to your room. I think that if we were genuinely able to gather, and I'm not suggesting another convoy or anything like that, what I'm saying is if we actually, I know in my heart, there's millions more of us than there were during the convoy. Over 3 years, enough suffering has occurred. The lack of the silence that we see from all the politicians, their stage play that you see, it's just so apparent to me. That's what gives me hope every morning, and why I will never lose hope or stop fighting, because I care about you. I want you to have the freedom that you seek. I want, even the people I don't know. It's like a sense of duty to country, but more so duty to humanity. When you see the darkness, it's like, yeah, no, first of all, I'm not gonna let you demoralize me. And anything I can do to try and help spur that inner fire in somebody, or to say, hey, no, don't hang your head. You have value. You stood up in the darkest times in our country's history. Don't forget that, right? That strength is in there, but you need to remind each other of that. But I don't think we'll ever see, we won't see another convoy. But I have a strange feeling if there was ever an event where Canadians could come out without fear, man, I bet you we're at like 10 to 12 million of us that are like, no, No, because there was they say 6 million. I still think there was always more. I think they fudged the numbers as far as when the convoy was happening and how many people didn't enroll in the medical trials, all that stuff. I think that it's very hard, like you said before, with the polls, right? It's all just narrative, it's all manipulation. But I have faith that there's way more Canadians in this country that are good people. Most of the people I met in my life, and I've met thousands of them, most of them have been good people, right? It's like you have, and they always say you want to break it down into different groups. It's like, it's got nothing to do with race. It's got nothing to do with religion. None of that. Every single group has bad people. There's not one like group you can say, oh, they're perfect and all this kind of stuff. But I won't broad brush any group either. I think at the end of the day, most of us just want the same thing. Government just keeps getting in the way. So how do we rise, man? How do we figure out a way of bringing people together in a way that they'll always spin it, right? No matter what you do, the media is going to send, or Trudeau's going to send somebody out with a flag and have his photographer take a picture, and that's what's going to run. We don't need to pay attention to that, right? Because at the end of the day, as things get darker, the sense of community is going, or that yearning for a sense of community is going to grow. And I think that with the PPC and with other movements we see in the country, there's a home there for people. Right. And I'll be honest, again, I'm not a PPC member, but I'm very supportive. I want to see you guys get into Parliament. I want to see libertarians get into Parliament. I want independents to get into Parliament. It's a giant bubble of narrative control where they play off each other. And they've been doing it for decades. And I've had people argue, oh, it's from the beginning. And they're like, well, technically, it was probably the mid-90s, right after Mulroney signed Agenda 2015, right? And okay, I'm not going to, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But at least I know right now, Parliament should have a crime scene tape wrapped around it. That's solved the problem, right? Arrest them, put your phone. I've been in rooms. It's like, leave your phone on the table. Security is coming for you, right? Like, okay, let's go. But right now we don't have that. And so all we can do is rely on ourselves. But most importantly, is starting to realize again that you can't stay isolated. You can't be in those circumstances where it's hopeless. Because we can be our own worst enemies at any moment in time in our lives. It's because of, I don't know if it's cultural or if it's just human nature, where the darkness comes, and once hopelessness sets in, it's a very steep slope of paralyzation that can occur. Or you start drinking a lot. It's like this escapism, right? You don't want to face reality, but if you don't face reality, then you can't heal, and you can't get back on that horse with confidence and say, screw you guys. I don't care what you do to me. I'm going to keep smiling. I'm going to keep living. I'm going to keep trying to light those fires in people. And with each day that comes, we'll deal with the circumstances that are in front of us, and try not to look too far down the road, because you're going to miss life again. And I've already missed it. I look like I said, I'm almost 50. I look back at my life and I'm like, would I have made different choices if I knew this was going on? Probably, but I wouldn't want to change anything because we're here, right? No matter what you did, no matter what changes you could have made in your life, this was still going to happen. Because it's been in the works since at least probably the 1970s, if not the 1940s, mid 50s. There's been even go back to 1913, Jekyll Island and central banking. We can go and say, oh, okay, this is where it actually started, but it doesn't remove the fact that what's in front of us today is there's an opportunity here, right? We just don't know exactly how to actualize that and how to bring people together in a meaningful way, where you can have confidence that the efforts you're making are going to spark some kind of change. And I think as soon as you start realizing you're changing in yourself, and you're starting to let go of the things that don't matter, and you start to remind yourself of what to be grateful for on a day-to-day basis, there's that fire you can keep at a nice hum. And it's infectious, right? Enthusiasm in the dark times is people like, are you crazy? It's like, well, no, there's kind of crazy, right? When you laugh at something hysterically, and it's a crazy laugh, okay, right? You might need to take a step back. But if you can laugh at something because you understand the game and not internalize it and take those arrows on a daily basis, I think I described in that space. It's like at one point in time, I felt like Boromir on Lord of the Rings, right? Just arrow after arrow after arrow. And it's like eventually you're going to drop to one knee, because you're human. You can only take so much. And if you have empathy and compassion in this world, they've done a pretty good number on making you question humanity in general, right? Is evil permeating? Yeah, it always has. But we got to be the light. We got to shine, man. I'll leave it there. Sorry, a bit of a ramble.
No, it's okay. I want to go back to, I said progressivism, you're saying communism, you mentioned fascism. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm just going to list off some of the things that government has gobbled up. Like, healthcare is a big one. We have a single payer model. Public education is provincial. Post-secondary education is provincial, federal. What else do we have? In BC, we have car insurance. They've taken over the liquor control boards, all the rating and regulatory systems for, law societies, the College of Physicians, the licensing of doctors, the numbers, like it's all command economy. Um, you mentioned you're a classical liberal. Like, where do you think the line should be drawn? Do you think some of these things are in the right place? How far towards libertarianism should we take it?
Well, I think it comes down to, um, because in the end, it's individual responsibility versus the greater good of society, which I caught your laugh, right? And I think that where we're at now is, for me, it's like when I look at the states and you see a lot of the, it comes down to efficiency, right? So what is the intent of the law? Is it intended to provide a level of standardized safety, right? And again, that term safety, very, safety for some person is going to be safety for different interpretation for another. But we're in a situation now where I think most of the problem is that it's become institutional growth, right? The government's thinking, how can we clamp it down here? How can we increase tax revenue over here? How can we create a more monitored society, right? Because it's inherently the government doesn't trust us. With a lot of their actions, they're saying, well, you're not competent enough to make decisions for yourself. So now we are going to impose, because of a few people, right? Because they always do that. They exploit it. We see it in the States. There's a gun thing. Oh, let's take everyone's guns away, right? It's no different here as far as the problem, reaction, solution mentality. I think a lot of things, at least for the past couple of decades, has been every time there's a problem, they view it as an opportunity to grow the bureaucracy, to grow the surveillance, to grow government in a way that we don't even realize the long-term impacts of. You may not have kids, or I may not have kids, whatever. I don't know that circumstance, but we don't have a 7-generational component, very much like the indigenous do. It's like, what do we do today? What impact is that going to have 7 generations from now? And I'm not sure how old you are, but I'm Gen X, right? I grew up with all the freedom in the world. If I'm going to play and I get hurt, I learn from it, right? I own it, right? Be home as soon as the night lights come on or the street lights come on, be home. But I have that level of freedom to explore, to learn things, to grow. And I think we're the last generation. I'm not sure, I might be a little older than you. Probably, actually. I'm older. But these generations never knew. And if you were born after 9/11, you never understood, after the Patriot Act and other things that were put in place, all the surveillance that came up. You don't understand how free Generation X was. And we didn't have, like, our high schools, we weren't segregated in high school. We didn't care what color of skin color you were. We didn't care what sexuality you were. Yeah, there was people in the group that, like, in the school that had these very fringe opinions, but it was live and let live. We were all on the same ship sailing together. There wasn't these divisive tactics to divide us, right? And every time you have these things, it leads to more bureaucracy, right? You want to say we're going to go and get into DEI and all these other things that we're looking at that are very cumbersome and not good as far as the efficiency. I'm merit based. If you're the qualified person, I don't care what gender you are. I don't care what religion you are. That's why I used to carry the charter around. The charter was my Bible, for lack of a better term, until that one word, reasonable limitations, right? But I still carry that spirit in me. And so when you say all of the bureaucracy that we see, I think you could cut half in BC. You could cut half of it, right? Because if it is purely a policy to generate tax revenue, to bloat the bureaucracy so they can give themselves raises, so that they can live the high life. No, I feel like it's a squeeze, right? Why are you squeezing us? Like, your job is not to generate tax revenue, right? But that's where I think where we're at now is more restrictions. They don't trust us to make decisions for ourselves, and any chance they get, they squeeze us. They're like turning us over. How much you got? Any change left over? They don't want us to have a disposable income. They want us to be living within what they define as, reasonable means. And to me, it's like, get out of the way. If you're not there to serve the interests of the public and realize that, yeah, you're making $200K a year, your expenses are paid for, you're going to have a pension. What about the family that is trying to start out, that can't afford a home right now, that is going in to try and buy food for their family, let alone having a disposable income to sign their kids up for sports, to be able to do anything, take the family away on a vacation? They just keep squeezing and squeezing and squeezing. and then come out and lie to the public about the reasons why we're in such a bad place or why morale is so low. Like we live in one of the, I'm not sure, you're in BC, right?
Right.
Yeah, one of the most beautiful places in the world, right? I'm also a Canada, like Savannah, Georgia. Like I've got places in the world that I'm really, my heart is drawn to, just the old nostalgia component to it. But I think that we're in a situation where government has become so bloated, and it's not even just government. What the MLAs are getting played, it's the bureaucracy. I think that kind of what you're getting at as far as the what is the intent of the policies, and then once they institute the policies, the bureaucracy that comes out of that is so bloated. When I see what AI can do, I think that there's some things to be said about Doge and AI and the technocracy components that might end up coming out of this. But right now, it's kind of exciting to be able for them to see how bloated things are. And again, I'm an efficiency expert. So do you need a department that has 190 employees? Whatever ministry you want to look at. When I was in government, again, too, like are you making up titles just to give your friend a job? Right? It's like, why I got 2 job descriptions here. Put them together. You want to make 120 grand, then okay. And if this person, these 2 people, I'm going to hire the right person for the job. But most of the time, man, it's like, are you a party guy? Are you a part of the in club? Right? Okay, we give you a job, and I need to create a new position for my friends and family. People, it's like it's gone so far off the rails, Payman, that I don't even know if it's ever been on the rails when it comes to what the objective of government should be when it comes to how I view it, as far as do it efficiently. You're not there for a career, lack of a better term, as far as politicians. It drives me crazy when I see people, even like Poilievre, he's been a pension at 31. Are you kidding me? Right? I can't. By the time I was 31, I'd already had like 6 or 7 different jobs. I'd learned life. I'm able to empathize with different industries and people because I have some level of experience and a lot of different, life experience, right? So when we have these career politicians making decisions as far as what's in our best interest, come on. You don't even know. You don't even know what life is. You don't even know what it's like to have to potentially work paycheck to paycheck, or to struggle, or to go to school and, to pursue your dreams. And that's the thing, is if government doesn't get out of the way, are you ever really going to be able to actualize, figure out who you are, face those challenges in those moments, right? So yeah, man, I'd slash probably half the bureaucracy here. I would privatize ICBC. I would not have the government running it. So much of it can be done in the private sector that promotes competition, as opposed to a monopoly where they can do what they want. If they need more tax revenue, they want to create a new component of bureaucracy. And at the same time, too, you can't hold them accountable. So that's what I don't like. If you have a private sector and they provide shitty service, they will go out of business. They will no longer be a part of it. People will fill the gap that can provide the needs for the public. So I think the government gets involved in way too much, man. Again, long-winded, I apologize.
No, man, it's all good. I said 45 minutes, but are you good for time if we keep going?
Yeah, I'm good, man.
There's so much I want to pick up on there. Why don't we go? Well, here's this one. I try to imagine what Canada is going to look like in 100 years. Let's say 50 years. So you are bankrupting small businesses. You're driving people away. Like so many of my friends, if they've had the ability to leave Canada and go to a freer jurisdiction, they take their business with them. So your tax revenue is going down. I understand that it's gone up through Trudeau. That's because he's just squeezed people harder. But you're losing your taxable base. And you mentioned how it's job creation. These people that come out of these government-funded universities, they need a job, and they just create one in the bureaucracy. Tax revenue is going down. Costs are going up. What's going to happen in 100 years? Something's got to give.
Okay, like I've seen the argument before, and people I've been kind of looking into it. Okay, so if we viewed Canada as a corporation, I'm not saying it is, I'm not saying it isn't, right? If we viewed Canada specifically as a corporation, it's not sustainable. Some could even say it's insolvent right now, right? And needing to sell off assets, like the Bay. The Bay comes out and just says, we're doing that. I used to work for the Bay. I used to work in furniture and appliances and did some loss prevention security there, right? 20 years ago, more than 20 now. I'm old. But when I look at like institutions like that, the Hudson's Bay Company, they do what they need to do to be able to stay afloat, right? And so that's kind of where we're at right now as Canada. And I don't know if a lot of this stuff that we're seeing on the geopolitical side of it is kind of like the, hey, we're not going to tell the public that we're insolvent, right? That we have spent ourselves into oblivion. That, well, you say spent, borrowed, right? Unlimited credit card for ages. Your grandkids are still going to be paying for what they've done during COVID. And then now they're talking about, oh, the trade war could lead to another the similar style to a CERB program, which is what they're telling you is that we're expecting tremendous job loss. And what we're going to do is implement a UBI, but it's not communism. You'll still have purpose. You'll still have that reason to get up in the morning. You'll still be able to make choices for yourselves, just less, right? So when I look at what might occur in 100 years, it's hard for me to see this country in 100 years, right? If you ask me what will look like in 10 years from now, it all depends on what happens in the next 5 years. I think that we're in a situation where we are at a point in time where the light is going to shine. And I think that there's a lot of hurt coming. There's already a lot of hurt here, right? Like I've been monitoring the inflation, and they can say, I don't believe any of the government numbers. If you go to a store, anybody who's in the chat or watching this goes to a store, what they're telling us is a bunch of crap, right? Everything is inflated. Everything costs more. Good luck. Like we're starting to kind of see a decline in the housing market. What I'm hoping doesn't happen is a complete tank, but it could be a bubble, right? But even at least in that sense, we're going to have to go through hard times in order to rebuild. Right now, it is the, how best to put this? We're in a situation now where they're so far off the rails that they're going to continue with this controlled demolition. It's just a matter of, are we going to give them the permission to rebuild the Great Reset, this new way of living? Are we going to allow that to happen, or are we going to be in a situation where we got to keep moving? Like the big part of this payment is the ability to adapt, because whatever your normal is today might not be your normal tomorrow. And so the quicker you can get on to that, okay, we're going in this direction now, it'll lessen the impact, lessen the weight that you have to carry into the next day, the next week, the next month and year. So I think that we're in a very difficult place as a country. But at the same time, if we ever want to have a genuine opportunity to see what this land, this nation, this people are able to accomplish, you have to go through something like this, where the corruption's on the full display. The systems are clearly not designed. I put a post out yesterday, right? Unelected prime minister, unelected governor general, unelected senate, unelected judiciary, right? So it's this mirage is failing, right? And we have an opportunity. And I think I don't look at Trump as a hero or a savior. I don't see things in black and white anymore. I see them all in gray. I like some things he says. I like some things he does. Same with Musk. I do like some things that Polyev says, but I don't believe him. I don't believe a word that comes out of his mouth anymore, because it's all mechanical. It's all CPCHQ regurgitating the same thing. All I see is Andrew Scheer. I see Aaron O'Toole. It's like, where's your spine? I don't know what you stand for. It can change from one day to the next. So I think that through this, I'm hopeful that what the country needs, at least, is to be able to have people break through, that when they say something, they mean it. The way that they've crafted and made it acceptable to have these fake people be groomed in, they're actors, man. They're not who they say they are. They're puppeteering. And we can talk, long list. I always say it's like the globalists. Well, that encompasses everybody, and whether it's China, India, the States, Israel, the WEF, the UN, all these people. None of them have our best interests, right? We're like the golden child as far as the natural. Like Canada's a prized possession for any of these people I'm talking about, is in regards to mineral rights, the land, like all these other stuff that we have, that all these other countries want. But what we've never realized is, as a people, that we should be living a good life. If our government was actually working for us, we should be having all the opportunity in the world to flourish as individuals as well, not just as a nation, right? Like you don't want to be isolationist. You don't want to be combative. Like, oh, we see all this stuff. I would be doing it completely different with the tariffs right now. I think they're a bunch of children. I think that it's like they want the emergency so they can postpone elections. It's, to me, what seems most reasonable right now is that they're being agitative. There's no diplomacy. And coming from a background of doing mediation and things like that, I don't see any of them. Like, it's on full display. You have the groups, the mass formation that are all Team Canada. I even see them here. It's like ridiculous. I go into Save on Foods and they got all the American stuff blocked off, and I'm just like, okay, whatever. I want this. I'm if I go up to the cashier and they're like, you can't buy that, that's American. I'm like, okay, let me talk to your manager. Like, let's have a little bit of a nice civil discourse so I can point out to everybody how ridiculous you are being, without being confrontational, but still. So we don't have enough people that are willing to come through. And so I think that
Sorry,
um,
Kris, where are you?
I'm in BC. I'm out in the Okanagan.
You're telling me that I, I didn't see this in Edmonton. There's actually people. This is going through. I thought it was just online propaganda.
No, Save on Foods in Penticton's got these full displays of made in Canada. They've got stuff blocked off, not everything, but you can see that they've got things blocked off in the aisles. Yeah, and the
This is
Canadian flags.
ridiculous. This is like Middle East level brainwashing, where like you hate your neighbors.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
This is actually happening in Canada.
yeah. When I was there in line, and when I was checking out, they were all setting up a big Coca-Cola display, and the guy had his like little stencil out, and I saw the "Made in Canada" coming to fruition. Yeah, it's like this creepy. Like I get it, it's I don't know how they feel that that's appropriate. It's like this, like patriotism has been so distorted in this world that it's like you can have a love of country, but you can also, as far as being patriotic, you should be able to still call out the crap. You should not be having to be indoctrinated from one thing to the next as far as this is what you believe. And so it's no different with the LCBO, right? It's like you're not allowed to buy, they're taking all of the stuff off the shelves. You're not allowed to buy it. I'm sure if Save-On had the stock room, they would clear their stock. They would move it all off and just, we're only allowed to buy Canadian stuff and Chinese stuff, because there's a lot of Chinese stuff on the shelf. We're not going to talk about that though. But yeah, so it's like you go, I view it now, man. It's like I go out into the world. It's like, what shield do I need? Right? Because there's different shields. You need different skill sets. You need to be able to navigate the matrix, because you just don't know what you're going to run into. And I think you probably remember as well too, in 2020, it's like you go out and you see the looks on people's eyes. You're not wearing a mask, and it's like, yeah, you'd probably hurt me if I said any. You try to hurt me if I said anything that goes against the narrative, right? And so it's like navigating, creating your own little space within your home and your local community for the most part. But it never ceases to amaze me the level of indoctrination that occurs, and the corporations that go along with that. Right? It makes no sense to me. It's such an isolationist policy. It is very, like you said, it's very like we used to criticize people around the world, other countries around the world, for doing what we're doing now, and they're cheering it on, right? So you can see, even when we said there was that article that came out about the Canadian military using propaganda techniques they used during the Afghanistan war. They'd never stopped. In my opinion, I think it's a big part of the ability to, how do you sway opinion? How do you understand the psychology of a person? How do you manipulate emotion? How do you draw out an emotional response from people? And I think it's like on a daily basis. So I'm not going to shop at Save on Foods anymore. I don't want to go into those environments, right? There's other places for me to go, at least now, right? It doesn't say government owned foods kind of thing, which is kind of the direction we might.
I'm sorry to jump in, but this
Huh?
is crazy. This is like bordering on 1930s Germany level, Islamic Republic of Iran. This is not patriotism. Patriotism is not blindly following the government in power. It's, whatever shared values you have in your community. If you agree with those, you come to the country, you say, this is the kind of world I want to live in. And that kind of, from that, you build up a nation. But
Yeah.
they've inverted it, and they said top down patriotism is to do whatever we say. Put on a mask. Don't go in a restaurant. Don't buy American.
Right. Yeah. It's crazy. And that's like the part of it, like with my pin tweet, right? It's like that mass formation psychosis. It is like I think a lot of it is a trauma based component. I think a lot of people right now, there's even probably a large section of the people that are going along with it because they fear being isolated again too. Right. Like again, if you were not a strong person and you made a decision and you lost your friends, you couldn't go to social gatherings anymore, you're not going to want to experience that again, especially when you haven't had a chance to heal. You haven't had the government acknowledge any wrongdoing, right? So there's like a form of conditioning there, of teaching you a lesson. If you don't go along with what we're saying, we are going to, we're going to kick you out of the castle and lift the drawbridge, and now you're on your own. You're cast aside, cast out of society, right? I'm like, bring it, whatever. You're going to do that. I'll make do because I'm not going to play your game. I just can't, right? It's like knowing what's wrong and knowing that if I go along with it, that all the other people that don't want to go along with it, it's like knowing inside that, and if you all of a sudden, it's like the Kennedy quote, every time you comply, you get weaker, right? So I think we all have that like social responsibility of sticking together and holding the line, knowing that there's other people out there like us, even though we don't know each other for the most part, because they make it very hard for us to find each other, at least in general communities. But when you walk in and you see those things, you go into the LCB. I don't drink, but if you go into the LCBO and you see the empty shelves and you can only buy these kinds of products, the programming and conditioning I think it should be considered criminal. Get the hell out of the way, government. If I want Crown Royal, let me have my Crown Royal. If you want to do something that is not harming people, you should not have to ascribe to the government doctrine in order to be able to do something you want to do.
Can I jump in?
Yeah.
I want to tie this back to what I started out with when I said property rights. That, to me, that's not just an academic thing. Like, if I own land or if I lease it and if I have a business, what business is it of the government whether I sell Japanese whiskey or American whiskey? But there's a willingness among the public that it is the government's business. This is what I meant when I said progressivism. Government is there to keep us safe. You have the big bad boogeyman, Donald Trump, and we're all in this together. The way we get out of this is to vaccinate ourselves against American whiskey and stuff like that.
Yeah, same mentality. It sounds just as crazy as it did 5 years ago, right? And so it's like, how do we get to the point where? And I will say this: I honestly do believe that it's a small portion of the population that is all in on it. That they wait for their next signal, right? Bat signal pops up. It's like, oh, and orange man bad. Oh, okay, right? They go along with it, right? And then it's reinforced by the public, because again, they got the public to police us during the COVID event. They got the public to do it, right? Which again, criminal, should be criminal. But that's the thing is, and it's like testing, right? I knew there was a problem, man, as soon as everybody started stocking up on toilet paper. I mean, I can understand rice. Okay, rice, beans, powdered milk, things like that, seeds, toilet paper, really. But again, it's like, how far can they push the public? How far can they get people to go? And then you start seeing, as soon as the media picks it up, it's like, oh, there's a toilet paper shortage. All the people there is like, well, I don't want to be without toilet paper. So they create this response, problem, reaction, solution. But I think they've been trolling us, man. I think they've been doing it for a very long time, that they view us as useless eaters. They view us as not having the ability to think for ourselves, and they test it. Do we have the ability to think for ourselves? So they can that's the important data they need to be able to say, how far can we push this? Is this the right time? Will we go into the climate hysteria? Is this the right time where we get into a trade war? Will the people be upset that they can't buy Crown Royal? Will they go along with it, right? And I think that, at the end of the day, yeah, there's a lot of people. It's been decades of indoctrination. And we don't have, like, again, I'm not a big fan of Fox News. I see neocons. I see military industrial complex. I see favoritism in regards to their coverage. But at least they have an opposing side to it, right? There is some level of representation when it comes to the right side of things. Now, I'm not saying right as in right and wrong. I'm saying right wing, right? All we get is the same thing, whether it's provincial or federal. The media is the spellcasters, right? The government tells them what spell to cast. They broadcast it, and then they can gauge the results. And whether it's true or not, they're going to tell us that we're in the minority, right? And I just refuse to buy it. I think that, we're in such an interesting state right now where the world's been inverted. It's never coming back to the degree. And I don't really necessarily want it to come back to pre-2020, because I think that we're capable of so much more, man. I think if the government would get out of the way and we could tweak things a little bit, I think that, not even a little bit, we really, I don't like to use the term tear it down or burn it down. I'm just not like that. But I do think that if we could ever have some constitutional reforms, if we could ever get into the place where we could have the adults in the room. Right now, all I see is narcissistic children. That's all I see when I look at our politicians. I don't see logic. I don't see reason. I don't see our interests at the forefront. I see them all as a part of the same club, swinging away so that they can make sure that they're not kicked out of the club for the most part. People say, and we can transition because I think you want to talk about the PPC as well before we wrap up. But what I will say is that I think people are under the illusion that Mark Carney's not going to win the next election, right? It's like if you
Yeah,
look
yeah,
into
they are. Yeah.
if you look at Mark Carney, if you look at Mark Carney and you look at Pierre Poilievre, Poilievre is a nothing in the grand scheme of globalism and Agenda 2030. He is nothing in comparison. Mark Carney's a part of the Club of 30. He's a Bilderberger. He's like this guy. This guy's not going to lose to Poilievre. I'm just saying, if I'm wrong, okay, because then Carney can come back in. But my gut tells me that Poilievre has literally been a placeholder. He announced during the convoy, February 5th, right? He had said nothing up to that. He was actually supportive of a lot of the policies that were happening, and he said nothing as far as the rights being trampled. Comes out on February 5th during the convoy. And when it happened, the way it was all presented and stuff, I just thought, I guess Klaus Schwab picked up the phone. But I didn't really know at the time. Like I'd seen some globalist, I had globalist hints with regards to Harper and, and Andrew Scheer and O'Toole. Like I had my spidey senses were going off. And I didn't trust him at all. At the same time, I didn't realize how much of a game this is. And now when I started swinging, you probably saw some of my posts, like, this looks like a giant distraction. His whole campaign, slogans for 3 years. All that corruption, man, all these things that, we had the proroguing last time because the speaker wouldn't hand over the Winnipeg lab documents. Where did that go? We had 11 MPs that were tied. And if you look at Sam Cooper, it's over 40 MPs that have ties to foreign interference. Hope Commission comes out, nothing to see here. Like the convoy, right? The guy comes out, nothing to see here, but the courts, so I think a lot of what we see with Poilievre is he's doing his job. It's a distraction, right? There's no substance there, right? He's not Canada first.
Let me ask you on that before we move on.
Yeah.
You could maybe devil's advocate, maybe I'm just pushing back. Is it that he's compromised or this is just his role? Or did he look at the landscape in Canada and he's like, holy crap, like Canadians, they don't know anything. The Liberals control the media. So there's no way I can convince them of all the rot in government. Let's just move on. Which do you think it is?
I think it's a bit of both, because I think it's like when you have the biggest megaphone. So I'll give an example. Leslyn Lewis seems to be the person that they tap to talk about the issues that are really important. So whether it's the WEF's digital ID, known traveler program, whether it's the WHO pandemic treaty, all these things, but it's never him, right? And that's where I take issue with it, right? It's like, if you have the largest podium in the country and you want to play footsies with these people, I cannot accept that as you're playing the game. Because if you see the way Trump handles the media, there's the playbook, right? You know how the media is going to respond, right? So I've said, I give them a bit of a pass. And like I said, I used to be in politics, right? So it's like, okay, you want to get something onto the head. If you want to get something on the front page, right, you have to provoke it. But you have to know what the response is. And the responses are very predictable. So it's more important that you're ready for the responses, because they're going to come out, they're going to gaslight, they're going to spew all of their crap to say, oh, he's this, he's this, he's this. That's when you hold your press conference with all your whiteboards behind you. You come out, you act like an adult and say, it's not my job to be the friends of Canadians, to play along with this system that is designed, it's a self-perpetuating system. Right, I'm here to tell the truth, whether you want to believe me or not. If you want to do the research, okay. But I'm going to come out and I'm going to speak to the Canadian people like an adult, right? So this whole idea of hiding from the media and not saying anything because he needs to court the left, I don't know, man. I would like to think that I just can't buy it. I think there's so many people like myself in the middle that are going, where's your backbone, man? How can you see 5 years of the trauma that has been put on to the Canadian people? Doesn't matter whether you're in the cult or not, right? The amount of damage that has been done to the psychology, the generations, the early childhood development, all of this stuff that was stolen from people in 2020, they're not going to actually have that ability to heal because you can't even talk about it. You can't acknowledge. That's why people say, you support Daniel Smith? No, I don't support anyone blindly, but she did come out and she apologized for the way that people that didn't participate were treated during that period of time. We can't even get that from him. And so when I'm looking at, can I trust that he's got the best interest of our country in front of us? No, no, I don't, not at all, because at the end of the day, it's principle. And if you can sit there, watch this country suffer, watch all these people suffer, see the suicide rates, see MAID go through the roof, and say nothing, you're useless to me. You're not going to fight for us. You're not going to fight for me or my neighbors. When it comes down to it, you're going to go along with whatever you're going to go along with. And it shows it's weakness or complicity. Either way, you're no good to this country over the long term, because nobody knows what you stand for. It can change on a dime. And to me, like, again, if I was a conservative leader, there's no way. I would be dancing with the media every day. I would not be hard. I would not be, go F yourself. I would be, well, that's exactly what I would expect from you. How much money did you guys get from the Trudeau government? Simple. How much, I'm paying for you to do this, right? Are you objective? Do you think you're objective in your approach to this, or is, by the way you're framing the question, trying to get a response out of me? Let's talk about that, right? Can I interview you for a second so we can get the public to give you an idea of exactly what your agenda is? Because I'm here to represent the people that are suffering in this country. But you can't get that from him. You can't. It's like this but they can they can get him to wear tight shirts. They can get him take off his glasses. They can stage an interview where he's eating an apple, like he looks tough, staged, right? It's all this theater, right? But at the end of the day, the theater doesn't help anybody. Our country has only continued, or the suffering, the weight that people are carrying is all been put on the public. Not these guys. They're still getting their $250K. They're getting all of their expenses paid for, right? So do I believe that he's playing a game to a certain degree? When you ask about, is he because again, if you look at the comments when I start criticizing Poilievre, it's like it's all political strategy, and it's like, okay, so what is the acceptable loss? If this is a war and you want to start using that, it's a strategy. Okay, so how many Canadians are you deeming as disposable, right? Talk to Sean Hartman's father, right? Is that an acceptable loss, right? Like, how many kids, right? How many early childhood developments to steal? How many suicides? Because the Canadian felt they were abandoned by their government, and the leader of the opposition, and I'll use that term lightly, doesn't have the balls to say anything, right? It's like you expect me to accept that all this trauma is okay, and I can't do that, right? And I've never been able to do that in my life. There is no acceptable loss. Not a single Canadian to me is disposable, and never will be. I'm not going to look at the data and say, well, I can't say this because this group of people or the media is going to do this. If you know what they're going to do, get in the game. Don't stand on the sidelines and just let all of these Canadians suffer and or die. Hopelessness, right? MAID. You think they're all people that no, man, they don't see any hope, and the government's facilitating it. I used to be a crisis line volunteer. The first thing when somebody even hints that they might not want to stick around on this planet is to help them see the joy. Not necessarily the joy, but we always had the thing. It's like making sure they had something to look forward to, making sure, you do the thing. Do you have a plan? How often do you think about these things? What means do you have to carry out what your thoughts are? No, this government's just like, sign up, the line's over there, right? And so for me, as watching the conservative leader, I'm just like, it doesn't matter who it is, Andrew Scheer, Erin O'Toole, Pierre Poilievre, it's CPCHQ that I have a problem with. Because if that's your strategy, if your strategy is to play ball with these people when you need to swing, and that's where the PPC comes in. The difference between the PPC and what Donald Trump did was he did it within the Republican Party. And that's the major difference is that the way that went down with Max and Andrew Scheer's election was they cast him off to the side, and then all the traditional conservatives, moderate conservatives, just even anti-globalists and nationalists, right? There's a home there for you. But you can't even get into the debates because the system is so jerry-rigged to make sure that Poilievre can get away with saying nothing about all of these major issues that are impacting Canadian psychology, the psychological components of just having that purpose to get up in the morning and believing that you have somebody in government that's actually fighting for you. He doesn't care. He's just going to keep the slogans. He's going to steal PPC ideas, reframe them as oh, this is a conservative idea. But in the end, so much carnage, man. So many people have been left behind by these guys, and I refuse to accept it as being anything around. Like, what are your principles? I would love to debate Pierre Poilievre as far as what does it mean to be conservative? What does it mean to stand up as far as Canada first? Let's switch that. Canadians first. What are you doing for all of the people that were traumatized and are still being traumatized? You won't even talk about it. So are you useful to me? You're not useful to me outside of keep doing what you're doing, because we need to wake people up that this government does not represent our interests. And so whether he's a coward and can't do it, or he's a part of the game and this is just the script, it's to sell. It's like a snake oil salesman, and their product is false hope, right? Like, if you deal in that, like, what's more evil, right? Saying, oh, I'm going to solve everything, but really you got a knife and you're kind of doing this. So at this point in time in our history, Payman, if you do not have the backbone to get in the ring with these people and swing, you're not the person to lead this country, right? And what he's doing now is he's handing it to Carney. All the things, whether it was the Paris Agreement, whether it was the tariffs, whether it's, he's Ukraine, all the stuff that really impacts the country. It's like the litmus test, right? Every now and again, it's a loyalty test. Sorry, they throw it out there. Who are you standing with? And people are looking like, wait a sec, another issue that is not really conservative, at least Ron Paul libertarian style that I am, kind of thing, as far as not being involved in the foreign stuff. I remember the days of being a peace, we were a peacekeeping nation, but now we got warmongers and stuff. So another long-winded response there. But I have no time for people like Poilievre. And again, it's like you swing against them online, and I feel bad because it's not feel bad, right? Because I don't like doing it. I wish I didn't have to do it. And I know that sometimes it can actually affect people I care about, right? Because I don't look at the conservative supporters and be like, oh, you're like some of them, the shills, special place in hell for them. But the one, sorry, but for the most part, a lot of conservatives or conservatives, people who are supporting Poilievre, they're just scared, right? They want the trauma to stop. They want to be able to go back to living their lives to however they see fit, right? And so if you take that away from them and you say, well, Poilievre's not viable, that's cognitive dissonance that they're not willing to look at right now. Or even if he is viable, the work's not done, man. Like, we are going to have to work very, very hard, not only to get these people removed from office, but if we're ever going to have accountability, then we need to start having conversations like adults. And what we see with the trade war and stuff today, we can't even get the adults to the table. It's all freaking child's play, petulant children, right? And so it's sad when I see it that way, but I can't argue. Like, I'm trying to, even you asking me, do you think it's this? Do you think it's this? My intuition tells me that, no, this guy's just been, his whole thing has been a distraction to buy time, because we've seen no accountability. All of his slogans, carbon tax, bring it home, common sense conservatism. What about the Winnipeg lab, man? Why aren't you criticizing Dr. Tam? What about the injuries that we're seeing? What about the economy? All of this corruption. What about Guibo, $251 million to his own company? Everything's just change the channel, right? It's, so again, like, how can you not see him as someone who's playing ball, right? And I don't know if he profited, like a lot of people say, oh, his wife and him profited off of some of the stuff that was happening. I don't even look at Acutus. Like, I look at with regards to Trudeau and some of the mRNA stuff. I don't look at any of that. I'm looking at what is the impact of the behavior, what this Trudeau government did, and how did the CPC behave during it. Right. And I remember sitting there, man, going, there's no opposition. I remember walking on the beach here going, I'm on my own. There is no representation in this country. My rights and the rights of millions were just trampled. And you can't even acknowledge it now. We're 5 years later. No, 3 years, 5 years. Right. And he just plays this game. It's like Pied Piper, man. And, would I think that it would be slower if Poilievre was to beat Carney? Yeah, I think it would be a slower path to Agenda 2030. But his voting record does not speak conservative. They're not conservatives. And I'm not even saying I am, right? I'm just like I'm a loving person. I love humanity. I'm just, people. I'm not really a fan of a lot of people. But still, You know, if we can't be real and be adults and being like, okay, what do we expect from our elected officials? Then what are we doing here? Right? We need to have the courage and the conviction. Like I do give credit to Max for speaking out. I give credit to yourself. I give credit to a lot of people in the PPC that are saying the things that need to be said. The problem is that the megaphones, you're trying to break through this freaking bubble, this glass onion that there are so many layers. And that's why it's like you can't give up. It's like when you asked me earlier, it's like, you know, what are the, or I saw in what you want to talk about. If you want to pivot now into the PPC and ask me a few questions.
Yeah. So first things first, that was an excellent answer that you just gave. I'm going to go back and watch it again. I recommend everyone else does. I want to ask you, where is the PPC weak and what should be our strategy moving forward? And you can answer that. But before that, I wanted to go to an audience question about the
Sure.
PPC. Sue
Yeah.
Kellen Dyer says Max had 49% of the leadership CPC. He should have taken the party from the inside. After the sheer departure, he could have had it.
Yeah.
So I just
You want
want you
me
to comment to that and then just
Yeah.
pivot to strategy for the PPC.
Yeah. I think that's something to be said. I think that it's possible that he might have been able to, but I think a lot of people underestimate how vicious CPCHQ is. And if you're watching, yeah, you are. And hi to those that know who I am. Um, Again, it's like you have they're puppets, they're put out front, right? So I think that, like in saying what I was saying about Trump, the way he did it, he was able to. But I do think that he would have been, that Max would have been able to make a lot more noise and a lot more. It's hard to say because, again, it's like, I do think, at the time, because I honestly believe he won, right? And when I look at some of the games that went on there, I think that they did no different than kicking, what the Liberal Party did with kicking people out. It's like, okay, Max is coming over the hill. He's got different views. They're not views that align with the long-term goal of Agenda 2030 and stuff. So I think they underestimated him at first, but I think there was enough of a groundswell there with 49% that he might have been able to be more effective. But again, you would have been swimming with sharks there. So it could have just been a delay before the PPC actually came to be, because I think the viciousness internally from the CPC is no different than the viciousness inside of the Liberal Party, right? They have a control structure there that is not designed. It is designed to crush people that don't go along with their narratives, right? And again, we saw how many people got kicked out even from the CPC. I think it was, what's his name? Derek Sloan. You saw other people that as soon as they have a different opinion, they will not hesitate. So it's either hegemony, you all agree, we're all in this, mindset, or you're gone. I think it would have been fun to watch, because I think that's, again, it's like, I don't necessarily, like, I understand why Max has done what he's done, but at the same time, there is a lot more levers that can be pulled, internal structures and organizational components, even having access to data and information to be able to at least be able to continue a mechanism internally as far as having a disruptive opinion. So that, because again, if he had stayed, then there wouldn't be this complete control over the narratives, as far as because you don't see a lot of the stuff that Max talks about. It's like, I listen to it, it's like, yes, exactly, that's what needs to be said. None of it comes from the CPC. So by not having him in the party, he can't generate the question. So I think even if he stayed internally, they would have eventually had to boot him, as opposed to him leaving. And I think that might have been a bit more beneficial to him, to have the party show their true colors and kick him out, than leaving and starting a new party. Because we see with MAGA, it was a lot easier for Trump to use the party infrastructure, to use the party influence, to be able to create the division, at least the conversations, right? And so all the CPCHQ can do, it gave them the ability to lock down the room, to lock down the media and the narratives with him leaving. So I think the argument can be made on both sides. I think he's done a good job so far with regards to. I don't believe the polls either. I don't even believe he's ever lost a fair election either. And so I don't care if people are listening to this and are going to say, well, he's lost 3 in a row. It's like, no. So you're saying we have merit to our elections. You don't think that there would be any gerrymandering? You don't think that the globalists, the Uniparty, would be a little upset having this guy stand up and say, hold on a second, children? That is not true, right? So they don't want anybody in there that's going to break the bubble that they currently have with the 338. So I don't know for sure. I can't say there was any nefarious things going on, but I'm sure as heck not going to say that he's lost 3 elections. I think that he's in a very difficult situation with trying to build a new party with the infrastructure, and not having that ability to get on the media. But he's doing better in regards to getting on more American shows and other things where they're kind of starting to pay attention to him. He's actually being added to some of the polls that we do see that are floating around X, which in the past he wouldn't have. But they're at the point where they want to exclude him from the debate. And I take issue with that again. It's like, yeah, you're scared because you can't go up there and be uniform in all of your opinions and have this guy off to the side making sense, talking to people like adults. We can't have that, right? It's no different than what we see with Save-On. You can't buy that food because it's not American. So like, it's like I think the job that the good job that the PPC has done is at least provided a home. Again, I don't agree with all of the policies. I don't agree. It's like, for me as a community organizer, I see it very much as a still very much grassroots. So you have a lot of independence on the ground. You have a lot of independence with your riding associations. I still see it as and I don't want to say infancy because that's disrespectful, right? But if you look over the long term, as far as how long it takes parties to actually start to develop and to be able to get candidates that have good showings, get to become known in the public, in this landscape, you're up against it regardless. So I think you would have more of a time frame to say, okay, you can't compare it necessarily to other circumstances. I think you can look at it just as it is, very linear, not necessarily in the abstract as far as what you guys are facing, but you're drawing the right kind of candidates. I think what you're doing is, like even when I was, I'm going to admit it, yeah, and I've never hid this, right? But I helped a buddy out in 2019. He ran for the Liberals in the most conservative riding in the in British Columbia, if not the country, right? Ed Fast. He's been a stalwart in Abbotsford here for a very long time. I'm in the Okanagan now. I used to live in Abbotsford. Anyways, the PPC candidates that showed up were, because I was in Abbotsford, Mission, and Chilliwack, right? So I would go and help and support at least just, coordination, strategy, tactics, logistics, messaging, right? All of the guys at PPC that showed up, first of all, they seemed intimidated, but they were good people. Right, they put their hat in the ring. They wanted to run. They care for their country. They don't agree with the overarching strategy, right? But you have to have the cycles. And I can remember putting my hand on one guy's shoulder. I said to him, and actually I caught shit from some of the people in the party. It's like, what are you doing talking to him? And it's like, he looked anxious. So I just said, don't ever think you don't belong here, man. Right? And I'm the campaign manager for the other side. But you could see in that, like, I think he was a retired vet, so he had like the confidence, he had the ability, but just intimidated by the system, right? Feeling like an outsider, like, because when you're walking in and swimming with sharks, they can smell the blood if you're intimidated, right? If you walk in and you're not cocky, I'm not saying pump your chest out and that kind of thing, but know you belong, that you're doing it for the right reason, and that draws out the strengths. A lot of it, Payman, is getting on the debate stages because you don't have the megaphones. So the only way you can do it for the PPC is on the ground and through platforms like X, right? And like I've said, even on the other spaces, it's like, start holding community barbecues. What you have that the other parties don't have is that sense of genuine caring. They are all scripted stage people. Toe the line. If you disagree at any point in time, you're out. You won't get that promotion. You won't be asked to run. You won't get that position on a campaign. You're a troublemaker because you have an opinion, an independent thought. And I've never had that feeling with any of the people I've talked to from the PPC. So I'll agree with you on 90%, probably. I don't think it's a standard. 9 out of 10 things we might agree. But even if we don't agree, that 10%, 20%, we can still have a civil conversation about it. I can learn and I want to genuinely understand your frame of reference, why you feel the way you do. And I would imagine it would probably be the same. I felt the same way with other PPC candidates or just PPC people, right? I see it's weird because everyone loves to say, oh, you're PPC. It's like, no, but I'm also not playing your game either. Right, I'm an independent, but at the same time, like I said, I'm very supportive of what the PPC is doing. Where I do see weaknesses is the, and again, don't take this the wrong way, but as a community organizer, there is a weakness in regards to the strength of the ground game. Like the ground game is where I would put most of the energy and most of the efforts, because where I think there's a missed opportunity right now, and feel free to come back at me on this. is that sense of community. You have millions of Canadians around the country that have nowhere to go, no one to trust. They don't know. They still haven't even started to heal from the trauma. They're still trying to figure out what the hell is this world, right? My reality is completely shattered. I've lost friends, I've lost family. They know there's a problem in the country, but they don't have a home. They don't have a place where they can show up. They're not going to be judged. They're not going to be, you know what I mean? Like, that's the hard part about going into the community, is not knowing who you can talk to before, like I mentioned earlier, that trigger, right? And it's like, oh, okay, well, we agree on everything, but I mentioned I was out the other day and I said, yeah, I was a fan of the MCU until they went all woke, right? The Marvel Cinematic Universe, right? And I could just see the look. What do you mean by woke? And I'm like, oh, right.
They're the fan of the MCU after it went woke. Yeah.
Right? But it gives you such insight, right? And so what I say is, like, where I see as a weakness is an opportunity, right? And that's what I even said, I think, on the spaces as well too, is that still viewing yourself as the grassroots party, the ones that are willing to speak truth to power, the big tent that you guys have, is a huge benefit in order to bring people together, to create. All you have to do is create a safe environment for people. And how do you do that? Music, food. I'm not kidding. As a community organizer, man, that was the best way to, at least, because I would go into communities and there would be, so let's just say, for an example, there's a not-for-profit that's not helping. So you got all these disenfranchised people. Eventually somebody talks to me. I'm sitting at Tim Hortons. I'm like, I'm a free advocate, whatever, right? And then we end up having a group meeting where 50 people show up and they're all being traumatized. They're not getting access to services. They're being discriminated against, right? So the first meeting is full of trauma, right? And so I would just let everybody speak their minds. I'd be up at the front and just say, hey, you got something to say, get it off your chest. I'm listening. I want to hear it, right? I need to know. I need to be able, so in order for me to empathize and be able to genuinely walk with you, I need to experience what you have experienced. So I'm not going to criticize. I'm not going to question what you say. Speak your truth, right? So everybody stands up. And then what do we do at the end of the one? Okay, thank you for that. I would take notes, but most of the time I would just be listening for themes, right? Where are people at? Where's the primary issue that, whether it's systemic or whether it's an individual, that's causing the problems. In this scenario, just by creating an environment that is positive, is going to be healing for anybody that shows up, right? And I even said that to a couple other people. I met with the PPC candidate out in my riding, and I will probably be helping him out here. Because again, I can't help establishment people anymore. It drives me crazy, right? But what I look forward to in that helping is the idea of me saying, hey, it all comes down to the volunteers. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter what you do. If the volunteers are not happy, if your supporters are not fed and feel good about themselves in participating, they won't show up, right? You have to give them that reason. So how do you do it? You do it through their stomach and through their ears, with good music, good food. And I'm not kidding, man. After a couple of barbecues, there was a community that started to form there. And from that's where it spreads. Because once you bring people together and you give them a positive experience, a positive environment where they can feel like they can be themselves without being judged, that they don't have to worry about all that crazy world, right? I said earlier, they're so good at creating all these parallel universes where what is the truth, right? Your facts are your facts, and you watch CBC, so I understand where you're coming from. You guys have a message and an energy to your party that the other parties do not have. There's a genuineness there, that the people that are running for office, there's a genuineness there. And again, I don't agree with everyone. There's some of the candidates I don't like. I honestly don't like. I don't like them. But again, that's not, whatever. I don't, it's nothing's ever perfect. But again, they're putting their hat in the ring. They believe, and they're pushing the party platform. So again, I don't have to like everybody. If they threw a barbecue, would I show up? Probably. I'm not going to spend any time talking to those people, but the people who are there, I can see eye to eye with on way more of the dark issues. And I'm telling you, Payman, it's a lot easier to endure what we're going through when you have a sense of community within your local community. And that's why I say one of the pieces of advice, if you have a situation where I don't know where, because I don't know a lot of the infrastructure, right? So let's just say if you have, because I was with the BC Libertarians for a very, very short period of time. And what I noticed with them was they had riding associations, but there was 3 people in one riding association, 2 people in another riding association, right? And it's like, okay, well, you need to merge those ridings. Until you can get enough people together, you need to merge those ridings. Don't have 3 people over here, 2 people. You got 5 people bring them together. So more connectivity amongst the local riding associations so that you don't have sparse gatherings, right? So if you can pull communities together, find a local an in-between place, right? So if you got the ridings, find somewhere central so everyone's driving the same distance, 45 minutes for each or half an hour for each, 15 minutes for each if the ridings are close. But start bringing those people together, and all your, to me as a community organizer, all it was having them leave smiling. They met new people. They had some good food. They had some good conversations. You're taking away that feeling of isolation inside them. And that does so much, not only for the mind, but for the body. When you can start looking at these people across the country that don't have a home, build it, man. They will come. I'm not kidding. They will come. And if they can have a positive experience, they will tell their friends. They will bring them next time, right? I even said before, don't even have big PPC banners, man. Wear your shirts, but don't have big PPC banners. And it's like, if you held one here where I'm living, and people because it's like right on the lake, north end. If you're in the park and you're having your music and they can smell the food, people will be curious. And if they see you having a good time in this world, man, people are going to want a part of that. They're going to be curious, right? So if your events, your barbecues aren't all about politics, but it's more about gathering. It's more about community. Have your flyers, have your policies and stuff, leave them on the table. If the people are interested, fantastic. Don't make it a political event though. Just come on out. Everyone's welcome. So you speak that. You're just kind of like, you are a big tent. So stay focused on that and people will show up, right? And over time, I think it's like you set expectations low. And that's why I say the heads up, as far as if you got a riding association and there's only 2 volunteers, you're putting a lot of pressure on yourself unnecessarily when you've got other people that are in the same position as you come together and have regional, develop regional caucuses where you have all the riding associations say, hey, we're doing this event. It's way more cost efficient. We're going to have way more people out. You have that environment and it will spread. They will talk to their friends and family. Where were you? I had a great time at the PPC barbecue. Yeah, no, it's not even really political. I mean, we're all on the same page. You are, right? If anyone shows up, the majority of you guys that show up, you are very much on the same page. But for the members already, just having that ability to meet and feeling less alone in this world is priceless, man. And from my experience in community, once that starts to grow, there's a warmth there. And I'm not saying everyone trust everybody and all the rest of that kind of stuff. That's for a totally different conversation, as far as putting yourself in a vulnerable situation with people. But just on a base level, you agree with 90% of everybody who's there. I mean, in this world, man, that can feel pretty isolating at times, I think that it's a really good starting point. And coming into the good weather, I'm hopeful. I think that that's a really good way that you guys could build your support, build your base out. And then at the end of the day, it's all about how many, I don't know if you should say foot soldiers, right? But if you treat your volunteers right, if you treat your supporters right, they will keep showing up and they will talk to people, right? So it's like when I was community organizing, there was always people in the groups that were always, they wanted to take control. They wanted to get feisty and stuff. I think if you have gatherings where there's we always had a thing in there. I always let the groups define the rules, right? So it's like, I'm here. I'm more like a facilitator in a sense. I'm a messenger, right? So I want you guys to define the rules as far as the group decorum goes, right? And I will make sure that we uphold those, right? As a baseline as far as what my leadership style would be, right? And so if you come there and you're respectful, you're able to have differences of opinions, you're not yelling at each other, you're not, you know what I mean? But I don't necessarily think I even need to say that to your guys. I would have to say it to the conservatives because you're going to have difference of opinions there. And you will have difference of opinions within the party. But as a standard, it's a big tent. You're allowed to disagree on things, but there's a civil discourse that can occur where all I see when I envision, the PPC really putting the grassroots ground game together is that it's the perfect vehicle right now in any community where you have people that are disenfranchised, they're isolated, they're alone. You guys are genuine in what you're trying to do. So that level of fakeness, that level of overproduction and overproduced scripted BS isn't there. So you have that ability to build bridges where the other parties don't, because they're machines. They literally are robotic machines that is a standard operating procedure no matter where they go. Everything is scripted. Everything's photo op based, right? No, man, get some hot dog, steak, chicken, whatever. If you want to go vegan, if you really want to go the extra level to really be inclusive, keep it super simple, man. Create positive events, positive memories for people in this day and age, man. they'll show up, they'll keep going, they'll tell their friends, and over time you'll fill those riding associations to a point where you can have individual events in each community, but just don't stretch yourself too thin if that's a problem in the beginning. Getting those volunteers out, filling those slots, treasurer, whatever. How, I don't know. I think that each riding association has like 4 official positions, and if not more. Again, bloated because they love the titles. They don't actually do anything. But
It's like government.
exactly, right. So that's my like where I see as a weakness. There's a huge opportunity there, and I think that's really outside of what you guys can control. That is something you can control. Getting the exposure in the media and all these things that keep your message from getting out. No, like you really don't have any control over that, because the uniparty is going to go to pull every lever to prevent the Canadian people from knowing what you guys are, knowing what you stand for, because they're scared of you. Honestly, at the end of the day, they're scared of your message because or not necessarily scared, right? Potentially, because like genuine populism, if it catches fire, that's going to make any government be like, okay, right? But honestly, from a base level coming in, I don't know when we're going to have an election. They say October, it could be soon, but internally,
Could be never.
it could be never, right? Yeah, but the barbecues can continue, right? Like the thing about it is that right now, like I say, I'm kind of repeating myself, just because it's so important for people in a local community to have something to look forward to feel a sense of community, right? And we don't have that. I think they fractured a lot of communities. A lot of people are sitting at home. They don't know who to trust. They don't know who to talk to. And if like what I had with strangers, you don't know. How do you meet new people? How do you build friends after losing dozens, if not hundreds, depending on how big your social circle was when you said, no, I'm not going to participate in this crap, right? So learning how to live again. And so just creating those platforms, creating those opportunities for people. And it can even be simple. If someone's got a big house and they've got a backyard, if you want to do that, then do it that way. But I would say, try and mix it up, do it in public so people can be curious about, people are having fun over there. What is it? What's that about, right? And if you provide the place, man, the right now it's more needed than ever. And you guys do have, you're the only ones really in the country that has that infrastructure, at least loosely, in place, where if you kick it up a notch and start inviting people, who knows where it could lead, man. So I'll leave it there. But that would be my overall assessment is that thankfully you guys are around, right? I just think that there can be a lot more done to bring people on board, right? And be happy with it, right? Because I don't foresee, like, if the PPC gets together, it's not going to be sitting there, we're in such a bad place. It's no, right? Put CCR on, put whatever music you want on, get your cooks at the barbecue. We know we're in a tough spot, but having to there's not a lot of options for people right now. And you guys have that platform, you have the stage to be able to at least facilitate giving people an opportunity to participate. And the more they do, the more the people that come out, the more curious they get, the more they're actually going to take a look at you in more seriously. And then at the end of the day, it is all politics is local, right? So again, you'll have PPC running municipally, federal, provincially, but you need to have that general network of knowing that you've got each other's backs locally, and that when the times get dark, that's when you have a barbecue, man. When things happen, it's just like, you can feel, trust your intuition. If you feel it, odds are people around you feel it. Bring them together and give them some positive memories, because that's good for morale, man. And there's no other groups right now that can do that have that understanding of a base level of vast majority. If you guys are all on the same page with regards to policies, so you remove all of the potential triggers and the devolving of discussions. So don't start outside of that circle. Create the circle and invite people in. So I'll leave it there.
Good advice. And starting on Monday, I'm going to reach out to the other EDAs around me and be like, all right, let's Operation Kris is a go. Get that started.
And if there's people out in the Okanagan, right? Like, again, I'm available and more than willing to help out. I'd love to participate. I'll man the music. Somebody else can, or I'll cook too, right? It's just like build those communities and build those memories, man. And I think that you will help people far more than you realize right now if they can come away and go home at night and know they had a good time. They're not alone. Man, that's all you got to do is show up, right?
Will do. Kris, in wrapping up the show, why don't you tell the audience where they can go to, I don't know, follow you?
Yeah, my handle is at K Eriksen V2. It's on the screen there. K capital Eriksen V2 on X. Yeah, that's the only platform that I use for now, and yeah, I'm around. So I'm on X a lot, just not as much as I used to be. So, although I've been kind of neurotic lately, a little bit manic, but
Things are picking
walking
up.
around. What's that?
Things are picking up in this country. Yeah.
Yeah, when it picks up, then I'm kind of a little bit more on the game, more on the go. I've been thinking about doing a podcast and other things to kind of flirting with what the future might hold. I'm going to start doing wellness spaces again, and like I said as well too, anytime you guys want to hold spaces and pick my brain, I'm available and willing to help out wherever I can. So, yeah, thanks for having me on again, man. Look, this is like therapy for me too. So if you go to my page and it's all like doom and gloom, at least you get to see me. I'm not a defeatist. I am a relentless optimist, and I'm never going to give up, and neither should you or anybody else is watching this. So we keep riding.
Kris, thank you very much for coming on. I really enjoyed the conversation, and I look forward to the next one.
Keep in touch, Payman, and send me any content you want me to share. I'm game. So thanks
Thank you
again.
very much. Take care.
Take care. Yeah.